Universitas Gadjah Mada bekerjasama dengan pemerintah Kabupaten Sleman menginisiasi pelaksanaan Health and Demographic Surveillance System atau HDSS di Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta. HDSS Sleman merupakan suatu laboratorium lapangan yang mengumpulkan data transisi kependudukan, status kesakitan dan kematian, transisi sosial, dan juga pemanfaatan pelayanan kesehatan.
HDSS Sleman bermanfaat untuk memantau kondisi kependudukan atau demografi, kondisi morbiditas dan mortalitas penyakit, kemudian memantau pemanfaatan pelayanan kesehatan. Hal tersebut bermanfaat untuk kebijakan peningkatan status kesehatan masyarakat terutama di Kabupaten Sleman maupun secara nasional.
Demi meningkatkan efektivitas dalam pengolahan data, HDSS Sleman menerapkan metode pengambilan data berbasis teknologi sehingga proses pengolahan data menjadi lebih cepat dan efisien.
Kelebihan pengelolaan data dari HDSS Sleman yang pertama terkait dengan kecepatannya. Kalau dibandingkan dengan manual, dengan berbasis teknologi ini akan menjadi lebih cepat. Terus kemudian juga yang kedua lebih aman karena hanya orang tertentu yang akan mendapatkan aksesnya. Terus kemudian yang ketiga terkait dengan entry datanya juga akan mengurangi error karena sudah dibuat sistem yang memungkinkan untuk mengkoreksi kalau terjadi error. Terus kemudian juga yang terkait dengan integrasi data itu akan memudahkan bagi peneliti kalau ingin mengintegrasikan dengan data lain yang dibutuhkan.
Kegiatan ini dilakukan dalam siklus 1 tahun sekali sejak tahun 2014. Pada siklus pertama atau baseline survei di tahun 2015, HDSS telah mengumpulkan data demografis dasar dengan melibatkan 5.147 rumah tangga yang terpilih dari 216 klaster di wilayah Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta. Data yang dimiliki HDSS Sleman terdiri dari data demografi, epidemiologi, faktor ekologis, dan pemanfaatan layanan kesehatan. Data yang telah terkumpul tersebut didapatkan HDSS Sleman dari proses wawancara dan pengukuran langsung di rumah responden, baik yang di perkotaan maupun di pedesaan. Pada siklus kedua dan selanjutnya, HDSS Sleman akan memperbarui data demografis serta menambahkan data kesehatan lain berupa faktor perilaku beresiko, penyakit menular, dan tidak menular, serta data pemanfaatan layanan kesehatan. Demi meningkatkan status kesehatan masyarakat, HDSS Sleman juga aktif melakukan penyuluhan di beberapa daerah di Kabupaten Sleman. Bentuk peran aktif lainnya adalah workshop dan pelatihan pengolahan data. Kegiatan ini diharapkan mampu meningkatkan kualitas peneliti serta profesionalitas dalam melakukan penelitian. HDSS Sleman membuka kesempatan bagi dosen atau mahasiswa untuk menggunakan data HDSS Sleman sebagai data sekunder untuk dianalisis sebagai bahan penulisan paper, jurnal, atau policy brief dengan mengirimkan form permintaan dan permohonan data, proposal, serta fotokopi identitas ke Sekretariat HDSS Sleman. Dan hasil akhir penggunaan data harus dikirim kembali ke HDSS Sleman. HDSS Sleman juga membuka kesempatan bagi peneliti untuk bergabung bersama HDSS Sleman dalam nested research. Dengan melakukan nested research, proses penelitian dapat berjalan lebih efisien karena pengambilan data diorganisir langsung oleh HDSS Sleman.
Kami berharap data-data HDSS Sleman dapat digunakan di berbagai penelitian di tingkat nasional maupun internasional. Kami juga berharap data-data HDSS Sleman dapat dipakai untuk penentu kebijakan khususnya di Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta.
Pada tahun 2014, Fakultas Kedokteran Universitas Gadjah Mada bekerjasama dengan pemerintah Kabupaten Sleman menginisiasi pelaksanaan Health and Demographic Surveillance System atau HDSS di Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta. HDSS Sleman merupakan suatu laboratorium lapangan yang mengumpulkan data transisi kependudukan, status kesakitan dan kematian, transisi sosial, dan juga pemanfaatan pelayanan kesehatan.
HDSS Sleman bermanfaat untuk memantau kondisi kependudukan atau demografi, kondisi morbiditas dan mortalitas penyakit, kemudian memantau pemanfaatan pelayanan kesehatan. Hal tersebut bermanfaat untuk kebijakan peningkatan status kesehatan masyarakat terutama di Kabupaten Sleman maupun secara nasional.
Demi meningkatkan efektivitas dalam pengolahan data, HDSS Sleman menerapkan metode pengambilan data berbasis teknologi sehingga proses pengolahan data menjadi lebih cepat dan efisien.
Kelebihan pengelolaan data dari HDSS Sleman yang pertama terkait dengan kecepatannya. Kalau dibandingkan dengan manual dengan berbasis teknologi ini akan menjadi lebih cepat. Terus kemudian juga yang kedua lebih aman karena hanya orang tertentu yang akan mendapatkan aksesnya. Terus kemudian yang ketiga terkait dengan entry datanya juga akan mengurangi error karena sudah dibuat sistem yang memungkinkan untuk mengkoreksi kalau terjadi error. Terus kemudian juga yang terkait dengan integrasi data itu akan memudahkan bagi peneliti kalau ingin mengintegrasikan dengan data lain yang dibutuhkan.
Kegiatan ini dilakukan dalam siklus 1 tahun sekali sejak tahun 2014. Pada siklus pertama atau baseline survei di tahun 2015, HDSS telah mengumpulkan data demografis dasar dengan melibatkan 5.147 rumah tangga yang terpilih dari 216 klaster di wilayah Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta. Data yang dimiliki HDSS Sleman terdiri dari data demografi, epidemiologi, faktor ekologis, dan pemanfaatan layanan kesehatan. Data yang telah terkumpul tersebut didapatkan HDSS Sleman dari proses wawancara dan pengukuran langsung di rumah responden, baik yang di perkotaan maupun di pedesaan. Pada siklus kedua dan selanjutnya, HDSS Sleman akan memperbarui data demografis serta menambahkan data kesehatan lain berupa faktor perilaku beresiko, penyakit menular, dan tidak menular, serta data pemanfaatan layanan kesehatan. Demi meningkatkan status kesehatan masyarakat, HDSS Sleman juga aktif melakukan penyuluhan di beberapa daerah di Kabupaten Sleman. Bentuk peran aktif lainnya adalah workshop dan pelatihan pengolahan data. Kegiatan ini diharapkan mampu meningkatkan kualitas peneliti serta profesionalitas dalam melakukan penelitian. HDSS Sleman membuka kesempatan bagi dosen atau mahasiswa untuk menggunakan data HDSS Sleman sebagai data sekunder untuk dianalisis sebagai bahan penulisan paper, jurnal, atau policy brief dengan mengirimkan form permintaan dan permohonan data, proposal, serta fotokopi identitas ke Sekretariat HDSS Sleman. Dan hasil akhir penggunaan data harus dikirim kembali ke HDSS Sleman. HDSS Sleman juga membuka kesempatan bagi peneliti untuk bergabung bersama HDSS Sleman dalam nested research. Dengan melakukan nested research, proses penelitian dapat berjalan lebih efisien karena pengambilan data diorganisir langsung oleh HDSS Sleman.
Kami berharap data-data HDSS Sleman dapat digunakan di berbagai penelitian di tingkat nasional maupun internasional. Kami juga berharap data-data HDSS Sleman dapat dipakai untuk penentu kebijakan khususnya di Kabupaten Sleman, Yogyakarta.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Liana. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon. I would like to thank you for joining us today for this special webinar on how to write a winning grant proposal. This event supported by Sleman Health and Demographic Surveillance System or HDSS Universitas Gadjah Mada. As part of effort to provide you with timely topics and interesting speaker, we appreciate it if you would mute during the sharing session and please make sure that your display name is your real name. If you have any question during the presentation, please write your question in the chat room and your question will be answered in the discussion session. Please use raise hand option if you want to ask speaker directly. Komite will open microphone for you later. You may ask in Bahasa Indonesia and we will help to translate it. On this webinar, we have several agendas, so allow me to read several sequences of our agendas. The first is opening remarks, and then we have two sharing sessions. The first sharing session is about what do applicants have to focus on in writing their research grant proposal, and the next one is what do reviewers look for in research grant proposal. And then we have a discussion session, and the last one is closing remarks. Is it our honor to me to inform you that among us here we have Dr. Yodi Mahendra Datta, MD, MSc, Ph.D. as a Vice Dean for Research and Development, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And thank you very much for coming, Dr. Fatwa Sari Tetra Dewi, MD, MPH, Ph.D. as a Chairperson of Sleman Health Demographic Surveillance System, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Thank you very much also for Professor Daniel Reidpath, Ph.D. as the first speaker in this webinar. He is a Senior Director in Health System and Population Studies Division in International Center for Diarrhoeal Disease Research, or icddr, Bangladesh. Thank you also for Professor Nawi, MD, MPH, Ph.D. as a second speaker in this webinar, Professor of Global Health and at University of Gothenburg, Sweden. We would like to say thank you also for our moderator, the one who will get us in discussion session, Dr. Egi Arguni, MD Pediatric Consultant, MSc, PhD, as a co-chairman of Sleman Health and Demographic Surveillance System. Based on the registration data, we receive attendance are from university or higher education institute. They are a student, lecturer, and researcher. However, we also have among us our friends and colleagues health worker from hospital and health service, officer from research institute and non-government organization, and also teacher. Our participants are mostly in Indonesia, but we have a number of participants from other countries, including Australia, Germany, Ghana, Malaysia, New Zealand, Nigeria, Sweden, and Vietnam. We also have online participants that watching us by YouTube channel. Once again, welcome to webinar on how to write a winning grant proposal. We come to our first agenda. This is the high time for us to listen opening speech from Dr. Yodi. He is the Vice Dean for Research and Development, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. For Dr. Yodi, please welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear my voice? Hello?
Sure.
Okay.
Clearly.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So welcome to this webinar. Special welcome to my colleagues, Professor Daniel Reidpath and Professor Nawi. It's been quite a while since we last touched base, so it's really a pleasure to be able to welcome you both, even though it's virtual at the least. Yeah? So let me just first set the stage by highlighting two keywords, the background of this webinar. So the keywords are survival and growth. This webinar has been initiated by our HDSS because it has now entered the critical stage of survival and growth. Our HDSS has been established for more than 5 years ago with considerable investment from our faculty. And we invested because we realized the strategic importance of having HDSS for an academic institution like ours. And we've been very happy to see how HDSS has actually expanded over the years. And certainly, we would like to see HDSS thrive for decades to come. It's too important, it's too big to fail. But however, as you are aware, the future now is increasingly uncertain. The pandemic in particular is changing our world as we know it. So it's very risky for HDSS to rely solely in funding from the faculty for the long run. HDSS needs to diversify its funding sources to include external funding, and this includes competitive grants. So basically, we need to build our capacity to write competitive international grant proposal. And that brings us to today's webinar. Through this webinar, we will learn directly from world-class experts with a long track of winning competitive grants, but also reviewing competitive grants. So we have Professor Daniel Reidpath and Professor Nawi. They also have a long history of engagement with HDSS, so very, very knowledgeable of the challenges faced by HDSS. So I'm sure we'll learn a lot in this coming 2 hours, and not just for the sake of HDSS, because grant proposals are important for survival and growth in the academic world in general. So for that, we've decided to actually open this webinar for any lecturers who would be interested to learn from our experts. And we are very pleasantly surprised that we managed to attract so many participants. We have 177 registered, not just from Indonesia, but also from Australia, Germany, Malaysia, New Zealand, Sweden, Vietnam, Ghana, Nigeria. So I think this say a lot about our experts here, Professor Reidpath and Professor Nawi. Your reputation certainly precedes you. So for that, I would like to thank in advance our experts for making the time to share your insights today with all of us. Thank you also for Dr. Fatwa and the HDSS team for organizing this webinar. Last but not least, thank all of you for participating and also enriching the conversations. And on that note, I officially open this webinar and I wish you all a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yudi, for the nice speech. And we come to the next agenda is sharing and discussion session. This session will be guided with our moderator is Dr. Eki Arkuni, MD, Pediatric Consultant, MSc, Ph.D. She is a co-chairman of the Sleman Health and Demographic Surveillance System. And Dr. Eki also lecturer, Pediatric Consultant at Dr. Sarjito and also staff in Infection and Tropical Disease Division at the Department of Child Health, Faculty of Public Health Medicine and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. She received her doctorate degree in 1999 from Gadjah Mada University, and in 2005 got her doctoral degree from Graduate School of Medicine, Chiba University, Japan, in immunology. She finished her specialist degree in 2011 at Gadjah Mada University, and she has experience in publishing in reputable international journals, such as Trial, Gates Open Research, Lost Neglected Tropical Disease, American Journal of Pediatrics, and she has an age index of 24.67. From 2015 until present, she has been involved in various international studies with the main topic of child health, infectious disease, and immunology, such as the World Mosquito Program Yogyakarta, pediatric HIV cohort, diphtheria outbreak, spot sepsis, and pneumococcal studies. For Dr. Eki, please welcome.
Thank you, Mbak Liana, and also thank you for Pak Yudi for this very nice opportunity to moderate this very wonderful session. I believe that now we are coming to the very important session. The first session will be, I will very happy to introduce Prof. Daniel. Yes, Prof. Daniel Reidpath. I hope I pronounced it right. He is the Senior Director, Health System and Population Studies, Division in International Center for Diarrheal Disease Research in Bangladesh, and then graduated in 1985 from the education in Swinburne Institute of Technology, Australia. And yeah, I believe that next slide, please. I think this is only the 5 latest his publications. I believe that a long list of his publications we knew. And then next slides. Yeah, now he is has several ongoing research, urban health coverage model for scale up through South partnership, and then you can see here the list of very well funder. And then now I believe that he is a very right person for us to having he to share his experience how to write the very good winning proposal because Payodi already said that now it's very difficult to have solely for HDSS is have the fund only from the faculty, but we have to have another funder possibility. And then I'm glad to please Prof. Daniel to start your presentation. Prof. Daniel, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Egi. That was a lovely introduction. So let me just, I'll need to share my screen, and I think, yes. So let me just start by saying what a pleasure it is to be doing this. I think Gajah Mada is a bit of a second home, and to share the platform with Yodi and Fatwa is delightful, as is with Nawi. We've all sort of collaborated in one way or another over some long period of time. Given that it is international in nature, I can't do all the languages, but G'day, Selamat Datang, Akwaba, and Willkommen. And I'm afraid I missed some of the languages out. I'm going to focus on the writing side of the proposal generation, and then now we will focus on the review side of it. And you really need to put them together in order to understand the whole grant complex. I think one of the things you need to start with is why you want to apply for a research grant. And there are various reasons for applying for one. You're excited by the ideas, and therefore you're interested in getting funding so you can extend the research work. You want to make a difference. It's part of career progression. You can't progress in a university or a research organization without showing that kind of competitive research funding. And also you want to save your job. And I think in government universities, it's less of an issue, but in other universities, and certainly in an organization like icddr, being able to raise funding is just essential to be able to survive day to day. When thinking about the funding, you need to think about how to expand the horizons of funding. And I've just cut and paste the DevEx site because they happen to list a whole lot of funding. But what's interesting about the funding is that although this was geared around competitive funding, I think you need to understand when applying for grants that essentially money is money. Universities might sort of rank a grant as being more or less important according to the funder, but what's most important for you is getting the money to be able to do what it is you want to do. And some of that is through competitive scientific funding, through research councils. Some of it might be through bilateral aid or multilateral aid, and some of it might be through philanthropic foundations. And you ought to be open to all those possibilities. And they've each got their own subtle variations in terms of how to get the money. And I'll talk a little about that as we go. But I'm principally going to focus on the general approach to competitive research funding. How you approach it depends also on the sort of quantum of money, how much money you're after. There are small grants, project grants, program grants, equipment grants, personal fellowships, and then there might be just sort of money for monitoring and evaluation of projects. The small grants are typically seed funding. Most research councils, many philanthropic organizations, the Wellcome Trust, for example, has the availability of small grants. The NIH has their R21s. They're sort of $50,000 or less. They provide just enough money to be able to get some initial data going or to explore some ideas in order to be able to apply for a larger grant. And then there's the project grant, which is the substantial piece of work that you want to do to answer a particular question. Program grants might be for many sort of nested studies. Equipment grants might pay for a sort of a new PCR machine or something, and then there are personal fellowships. There is no foolproof formula for applying for a grant. There are many there's good advice about how one might apply for a grant, but there isn't a foolproof formula for it. So you need to learn how to write them. And there is definitely a sense of grantsmanship. People become good grant writers by engaging in the grant writing process, by failing, by learning, by moving forward. And you also need to understand that because grantsmanship is not about a generic skill, you need generic skills, but you also need to know the particular organization that you're working towards getting funding from. The broad anatomy of a grant is the institution that you come from, the investigators that are on the grant and who's the PI and who are the co-PIs. Then within the grant itself, you've got the title, the summary, the proposals, which are going to capture the significance, the methods, the innovation. There are going to be ethical issues, and there's going to be outputs. There's also budget and justification. There will be questions about patents, data sharing, sort of IP, data sharing, legal agreements, ongoing reporting requirements, and you need to be prepared to be able to answer all these in terms of preparing for a grant application. It isn't just I have a good idea, this is how I'm going to do it. There are critical factors that enable a good grant. One is the enabling environment. It's much better to be working from a university that has a solid, or a research organization that has a solid track record in fulfilling grants in order to be able to apply for more grants. To be seen as part of a credible research organization is actually quite important. I had a colleague who applied for a grant. He had a dual post, one within a not particularly good Australian university, one within a very good Australian university. He applied for the same money essentially from two different institutions. One wasn't even reviewed properly, and the other one did very, very well. But it was because of the environment from which he was applying from. You need to look at the fit of the proposal to the specific call. You might have ideas about what you want, but you need to look at what the funder's offering, because if it doesn't fit, you're wasting your time and their time in order to apply. And in fact, what really happens is they look at your proposal and the fit, and it could, if you haven't got a decent fit, it just goes to the side immediately and might not even go to review. You need to think about what the internal review process is within your organization or within your network of colleagues. It's amazing how important just getting good feedback is on a grant. And one of the most important elements of feedback you can get is, does it make sense? Is it readable? Is it coherent? You should make advanced contact with the granting body, if relevant, and develop an existing relationship. The reason for that is that depending on the granting body, having a relationship with the program officer can just make sure that the grant is seen by the right people, is directed in the right way. It's particularly important with an organization like the NIH in the US that you have a relationship with the program people. They don't make decisions about the funding, but they can certainly support you in important ways. It's important that you request the right amount of money. I had a colleague recently who put in a grant, I looked at the amount of money that she had asked for, which was 100,000, and I said to her, you won't get it. This organization never funds at that level. You should ask for something less. I would suggest 65,000. She asked for 65,000. She got 65,000. Now, it's a big question whether she could have got more, but the organization would just never fund at the level of 100,000. So you need to be aware of what the funding is available. The Wellcome Trust occasionally puts out a call where there is no ceiling on the funding. And that's incredibly difficult because then people think, well, that's ridiculous. There must be a ceiling. And of course, there is a ceiling, but it's actually quite difficult to make a grant more expensive than it really ought to be. And people can smell, sort of reviewers can smell a problem fairly early if you're asking for too little or too much. So you need to request the right amount. You need to talk about what the value add is of your grant to existing efforts, both in terms of the science that you're doing, but in terms of the broader science. You need to have a track record in an area, and either you have the track record or you have colleagues with the track record, and you can bundle a team with the track record. And you need to have a clear and compelling case. In terms of the enabling environment, brilliant ideas are important, but you need research support, recognition of the need to invest. And I think Yodi's example of supporting the Sleman HDSS is a lovely example of it. Gajah Mada had clearly recognized the value of that kind of opportunity to develop a platform for doing good research. Career paths for research management, it's sort of beyond this. I'll leave that. Let me just move on. When you're thinking about a grant and you're thinking of going for a grant, lots and lots of people have too little time. An NIH grant will take a good 3 months to be able to write properly, and that's with a team writing it. And you need to work out the plan for what needs to be done when. Everything from putting the team together, contacting the program officers, making sure that the case for support is being developed, going to the budget office in the university and getting clearance from them. It all needs to be timetabled out. There's a real tendency to look and go, oh, there's a grant and it closes in a week, we'll hurry. It's very, very difficult to write a good grant in a very short space of time. It needs time. You need to provide the time to do it. You need to take the space to do it. You need to think about the project costing and pricing model. Monash University provides tools for this. Lots of universities provide tools for this. I'm sure the finance department at Gajah Mada and other institutions do it. Certainly at icddr they do it. And you need to fit it because you're not just looking at your funding, you're looking at on costs that might relate to salaries or write down on materials. And you need to think about this and how this is priced into the total budget. You need to know the call, you need to know the funding agency, and you need to respond to the call in front of you. Not the call you wish they'd written, but the one that's actually in front of you. The question you want to answer, is it a problem? Is it something that is actually an interesting question? Can it be addressed with a combination of your resources that you already have in hand and the resources that you're requesting? And is it going to be something that will excite the funders and get them interested? When you're writing the research grant, the first thing people read is the title. So the title needs to be clear and descriptive. I recently saw a grant that had a very clever title. It relied on a pun. It was witty, but it didn't explain what it was about. And it's often best if you just give a very straightforward title so that the reviewer, when they come to it, is just going to understand what they're doing. The summary needs to be succinct, it needs to be catchy, it needs to be exciting. It's the best shot you have of capturing a reviewer's interest. So when writing the grant, you need to spend quite a lot of time making sure that your summary is right, and not just right in the sense of the science, but right in the wordsmithing, so it is captivating and it draws the reader in. You need to be clear about your aims and objectives. Your aims and goals, they're the end to which your objectives are directed. So you have objectives and they're heading towards your goals. The outcome of your project is measured by your objectives. And when funding agencies are funding you, they're literally buying your objectives. And therefore your objectives need to be concrete, they need to be measurable, and they need to be achievable. And you need to be thinking about this when you're putting it together. Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Because that's what they're going to be buying. Your goals need to complement the mission of the funding source, which comes back to what they say they're funding. And the objectives should help move the funding towards their mission. So if they say they're interested in climate change, you need to be ensuring that your funding argument is towards that sort of thing. The method section is part of the main body of the work. So I haven't put the introduction in, but essentially in constructing the case for support, you're going to have an introduction, which is going to provide a background to everything. And the background is going to sort of lead up to an argument of your objectives. Your method section is going to be your plan of action, how you're going to actually manage to deal with the research and how you're going to reach the objectives. Provide visualizations of how the research will unfold, a timeline, a Gantt chart. It's very helpful. Some grant schemes don't allow figures, some do allow figures. If you're allowed figures, you should use them because you can capture ideas quickly and you can convey ideas quickly in a figure. You need to demonstrate your thoroughness, as in you understand the methodology, you know what you're doing, you've got experience with what you're doing, it's a proven technology. People don't like funding methods that are unreliable because then they know the results are going to be unreliable. So you need to be very certain of your methods. And if you're not very certain of your methods, you need to embed something in the research that makes you more certain of your methods and a fallback position. One of the big problems in the way many people write grants is they write them so that if it's got, say, three little parts to the grant, they'll write it so that they do this part, and on the basis of this part, they do the next part, and on the basis of that part, they do the next part. And if this part doesn't succeed, all the others fall over. And you need to make sure that no one part falls over and destroys the grant. You need the grant to hang together. It should flow naturally from a problem statement to your aims and your objectives. So in your introduction, you're essentially leading up to a problem statement of this is why it's interesting and this is why it's exciting. These are my objectives in the research, and then your methods need to lead up to the how is this going to answer it. You need to be able to justify your choice of methods and highlight any innovation. One of the real challenges in the method section is that you're trying to explain an awful lot. You're trying to persuade them that you know what you're doing, and you often don't have enough space to do it. And the classic excuse is, oh, I didn't have enough space. Everyone has the same amount of space. You have to fit it in within the space. And different funding calls have different amounts of spaces. NIH grants can be quite large. Other funding calls can be quite small, and you just have to fit it within the space. If you go over, it's unforgivable. A table is incredibly helpful for being able to say, this is the objective, this is the question that it answers, this is the methods we'll use. They go, oh yes, okay, I can see that's kind of a work package. I can see how you're going to pull that together. And then the second one, this is my second objective. This is the question that it's answered. This is the method that it will use. And it provides a nice justification for what's going on. You need to be clear about the outcomes and the outputs. How will you know you've achieved your objective? It needs to be measurable. It needs to be concrete. Is there a sustainability plan? Are there longer term objectives? It's very rare that one is writing research that is completely self-contained. Research almost always opens more avenues for research. So the question is, if we fund this piece of research, does it lead somewhere? Does it open up an area? Is there a longer-term objective of why this area of science is interesting? In HDSS sites, the whole longitudinal opportunity of an HDSS site then opens up all those kind of opportunities. So you might say, well, my first study is that I'm doing a cross-sectional study to sort of get a lay of the land to understand this problem. My second study is going to be something longitudinal in nature so that we can see how this disease progresses over time. And my third is going to be a randomized controlled trial that we're going to roll out within it because we're going to trial in intervention. So you sort of have a progression of what the projects are that you'd be looking at in the future. Even if you're going for an infrastructure grant, which is that you want a piece of equipment, they want to know not simply that you get the piece of equipment, but that you can maintain the piece of equipment going forward. So if they're going to provide you a PCR machine, can you get the reagents? Can you support the equipment and so on? Track record is incredibly important, and track record is in a number of different areas. So when you're trying to establish track record as a personal researcher, conference presentations are generally considered a poor substitute for publication because publication goes through peer review. So in your track record, one of the things you want to demonstrate is that you've published. You've done research, you've published the research, it successfully builds a pattern of activity within an area. I think it's particularly challenging for young researchers who haven't yet had that chance to build a track record, and I'll come back to it. The other thing is collaborations. Collaborations can be a really powerful way of building track record because it's not just your track record, it's the track record of all the collaborators that builds together. But you need to have a credible collaboration. It's not enough to go and find the best Nobel Prize winners around the world who all agree that they'll work with you if you've never worked with them and they've never worked with each other. A good collaboration is a collaboration where there's some evidence that people have worked together before. And it might only have been that you've worked together before in terms of doing a systematic review or writing a critique or doing something like that, a secondary data analysis. It might not be a big project, but it shows that you've been, you know each other's quirks, you can work them out, you can work together and move forward. The collaboration provides real expertise. It provides opportunities for mentoring, and more grant funders want to see that there are opportunities for younger researchers to be mentored and developed. So it's a way of building it into the grant. The collaboration in this area and the other university has strengths in that area, and you can see how it comes together. So track record is not just about you, the scientist, it's also about the whole package of you, the organization, and so on. The budgets are incredibly important. It's often left to the end, and I would advise you that you start thinking about it early. You need to have different people with different skill sets to work on different parts of it. Personally, I'm hopeless at a budget. I would never rely on me to get the budget done, and I sort of pull other staff in who can help, and finance departments or research departments, research units within universities and organizations can often support it. Proposals, budgets are really proposals in the finance speak. You need to see from the proposal, you need to see what the elements were that needed to be purchased, whether it was person time or whether it was equipment or whether it was travel, and how that is supporting the overall aims and objectives of the study, how much it's going to cost, and whether it's a rational use of the money. It should tell the same story as the summary. So the finance and the summary should line up in the sense that if you've got, if you're presenting a budget that has no relationship to the grant, then it's not going to make sense, and they'll know it's not going to make sense, and they're not going to fund it. And it should relate to the objectives. Demonstrate an understanding of the costs, even in indirect costs of an institutional nature, your salary, your rent, your computers. Sometimes they'll ask for what in-kind contribution is being provided, and the in-kind contributions can be those sorts of things from institutions, not just, we've got a building, but in fact, we're supporting the library, access to library facilities and IT and all those sorts of things. You should fully cost your research. It's often tempting to undercost your research because you think that it's going to fit within the envelope of funding that you can get. You should fully cost your research. You can come to deals with your institution or with the funder potentially about other mechanisms for funding the research, fully funding the research. But to undercost the research and then have to deliver all those objectives that you don't have enough money for is really hard. And often you'll end up in a situation, if you're funded, where they'll give you money, but they won't give you as much as they were going to give you or you'd asked for. And then you have to go back and say, well, my objectives were fully costed at 100,000. You've now only given me 50,000, so I can't deliver all the objectives. And we're now going to have to negotiate what it is. And often it helps to break it into work packages. We can deliver this for this much, this for this much. And the work packages and the objectives often line up. What's the minimum you require to do a minimum amount of work? Don't try to do everything based on a ceiling of a call. So if the call's for a maximum of 5 million, don't go up to 5 million. Don't go up to $4,999,000. They know what you're doing. You need to ask for the right amount of money to do what it is you say you're going to do in your grant. One of the things many grants have is a plain language statement. And the plain language statement is the statement that is sent out to sort of by the funding organization to say, this is what we do. And it's often the statement that's read by the non-specialists on the grant review that just want to get an idea of what's going on. Your plain language statement is incredibly important. And this line of eschew obfuscating sesquipedalianism, and what that translates as, it was a quote of Hans Eysenck, a psychologist in the UK. And it was basically avoid confusing long words. And you should avoid confusing long words. It is a plain language statement, and that's what you need to work on. And while I'm talking about the writing process, let me just say, if you think about the way, no, I'll come to it later. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Prof. Daniel. Your time is 5 minutes remain. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. The other thing you need to think about is stakeholder engagement. They often, the grant funders don't just want the research, they want to see how the research is going to draw others in. And the kind of stakeholders that you might be interested in is other members of the research community. Or if we develop this piece of work, we can now engage with other researchers in an important way. It's a new technology that we're developing. Policymakers, if you're trying to make real change and you're trying to influence government, how are you going to engage them? And community, how are you going to embed the research back? What value do they get out of it? And this is more and more funders are looking for this kind of stakeholder engagement approach and will require a separate statement on it. And you need to think about the way you do that. The language. One of the biggest problems, and I'm talking to a group of people who speak Bahasa perfectly and can write beautifully in Bahasa, but are often required to write in other languages. And it's just really tough. And it is difficult, but it is language that is judged because it's the way that the research is conveyed to others. You need to look at the grammar. There are online tools for looking at grammar. You need to think about the spelling and the punctuation and the voice. You know, how does it sound? My biggest advice is use short sentences. And this is the eschew obfuscating sesquipedalianism. Don't try and capture ideas in long, complicated sentences. Capture them in short sentences. You're better off with 5 short sentences than 1 long one. In the book Harry Potter, the average sentence length is 11 words. The average sentence length in academic writing is 22 words. And I got a grant proposal back from a colleague that had a 66-word sentence. They're just incomprehensible. Break it down to short sentences. It doesn't make you look stupid or ignorant or not really good with big words. It makes the ideas clear. Have a logical step-by-step progression in your argument. Just develop the ideas logically. I get my students, my Ph.D. students, to write out dot points about the arguments. And if the dot points from paragraph to paragraph don't follow, I get them to go back and fix it. And that is my brief introduction to how to go about putting a grant together. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Dr. Egy.
Thank you so much, Prof. Daniel. It's very, very wonderful talk. And then I believe that now we have 107 people in the Zoom room. And then another participant joined us in YouTube. Hello, everyone, in YouTube channel. And then, I believe many questions will come to you, Prof. Daniel. And then for the next speaker, I will introduce you Professor Nawi. He is from the School of Public Health and Community Medicine, Institution of Medicine, Sahlgrenska Academy, University of Gothenburg. He graduated from Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and master degree in Master and Public Health in Umeå University, Sweden, and doctoral degree in Epidemiology and Public Health, Umeå University, Sweden. this is the 5 latest his publications, and then many more list, I believe. And then next slide. Yes, ongoing research. Now he is. I think that this is the current research is the funder come from Swedish Research Council. Prof. Nawi have got the fund from the Swedish Research Council for several times, and then several other funder. Prof. Nawi will talk about the what do reviewers look for in a research grant proposal. After Prof. Daniel talked about the applicant's side, how to write a good proposal. Now we can hear the sharing knowledge from Prof. Nawi about the what do the reviewers look for in a research grant proposal. Prof. Nawi, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Egy. Let me try to share my screen. Okay, sorry. Just give me a second. Can you see my screen now?
Okay, good.
Good. Okay, I would like to start by actually thanking the Universitas Gadjah Mada for this kind invitation to give a presentation together with Prof. Daniel, and special thanks to Dr. Yodi, the Vice Dean, and the Dean, Ibu Ova. And I'd like to say something in Indonesian. Terima kasih sekali Universitas Gadjah Mada sudah mengundang saya untuk memberikan presentasi ini. Di sini saya lihat ada guru saya, Prof. Hakimi. Selamat siang untuk Prof. Hakimi dan Bapak Ibu sekalian semuanya. It's very good to see many names here whom I know. I mean, previous colleagues in Gadjah Mada, my teacher, my supervisor, friends, and current student also in Indonesia or in Sweden also. So I'll spend the next 30 minutes to talk a bit about how to survive grant writing. I don't promise that you will get a winning proposal after these sessions, but at least I will try to share a bit of my experience in writing and securing grants throughout this year. So I'm currently working as a professor at the University of Gothenburg. I'm also a guest professor at UMI University. As teacher and a researcher, our daily life is being a reviewer, actually. We review our student work, we review our colleagues' work, and we are also being reviewed by doing research application, as Daniel mentions. It's our routine to write research application to secure grants for our research. So this is one of the very first review I did for one of my student in the undergraduate program in Gadjah Mada, actually. It was back in 2003. And this very student have just recently defended her thesis at the University of Galway in Ireland. So I'll take the opportunity also to congratulate Dr. Nurul Kodriati for the success of defending her thesis just a week ago. Over time, when I reflect back upon my journey as teacher and as researcher, eventually, over time, we accumulate our experience and expertise in doing review. When I was in Gadjah Mada for almost 11 years, I supervised 3 diploma theses, 22 undergraduate theses, and 33 master students. And I saw some of the students, my previous student in this room also. So it's very nice to be able to meet all of you again, even virtually. When I moved to Sweden in 2007, I continued the work as usual. Many people ask me, what are you doing in Sweden when I moved to Sweden? The same work I did in Gadjah Mada, doing research, doing teaching, and supervising. So over time, I've supervised 31 master graduates, 10 PhD graduates. among whom 7 as main supervisor, and eventually over time accumulated the credential to evaluate 44 PhD theses already. I'm currently supervising 3 master students and 8 PhD students, some of whom are in this room also. I still remember my publishing journey. My very first paper was submitted in 2005 to the Bulletin of WHO. This was the decision letter. Of course, it's very difficult to get things published at the first instance. So I got a rejection letter from the editor. And that says that I'm afraid that we are unable to offer any publication in its present forms, but there was an encouragement to revise and resubmit. So being reviewed like that, I was quite enthusiastic, I think, by then. I was very, very early in my careers. So I wrote a very long rebuttal letter in response to the comment to the editorial committee. And if you see on the bottom left, the length of the letter itself is longer than the paper itself, which was 3,000 words. So we are being reviewed all the time, and we are trying to respond to reviews. And I remember a year later, when I published that paper in 2006, I got an invitation to review my very first paper from the Canadian Medical Association Journal. So by then, if you see from the letterhead, I was still in Gajah Mada. I was sitting on the 3rd floor with Dr. Fatwa. And I got this appreciation letter by the chief editor. It was quite surprising. I did not expect this at all. The letter thanked me for doing a good review. I think by then I was quite idealistic. I mean, being a new graduate, I graduated in 2006. So when I got the invitation to review a paper, I really did the best of the job. I mean, I really invest a lot of time to read through the paper, to give critical inputs, yet polite. And I was very happy to get this letter. I mean, it was on paper, a piece of paper sent from Canada to Yogyakarta. So that was a moment in my life also. So when I moved to Sweden, I started engaging myself to be a reviewer. I collaborate with Professor Stigwall, and we established the journal Global Health Action in 2008. And I resumed the position as chief editor in 2015. Since then, I think as a researcher, we are doing a lot of review of papers. And then I got invitation to sit in grant review committees. I work a bit for Wellcome Trust, Institute of Tropical Medicine in Belgium, and National Research Foundation in South Africa. Since 2019, I got the invitation to be part of the Swedish Research Council Review Committee. So I sat in the Global Health Panel at the Swedish Research Council, and in the Epidemiology and Public Health Panel in the Swedish Research Council for Health, Working Life and Welfare, or in short, FK-KMK. I decided this year, I got the same invitation from both council. I decided to step down from the first one, the Swedish Research Council, because I'm going to apply for grant next year to the council. If I'm still sitting there, I'm not allowed to apply. But I continue my role as the reviewer in the second committee, second research council. So that's a glimpse of my task as a reviewer. So in a sense, I mean, in our routines, we are doing review all the time. We review our student work, we review our colleagues' work, and we are also being reviewed when we submit research proposal. So I try my luck in Sweden. So, I mean, when I moved to Sweden, I thought I wouldn't be able to be successful if I don't apply for grant myself. So I actually started applying for grant already in 2008, but it was a small grant, a lot of unsuccessful grants. And in 2000, this is one of my very first grants submitted in 2011 to the FK-KMK, the Swedish, this one was to Swedish Research Council. It was a small scheme called Swedish Research Link. Daniel talked about different grant, and Swedish Research Link is a small grant to establish collaboration. So this was very first attempt to apply for the Swedish Research Link program. And by then I applied for a project on establishing diabetes risk prediction in Indonesia. So it was not successful, as you might have guessed. See, yeah, we got comments about scientific reviews. I was quite disappointed actually when I got these comments. The reviewer thought that I was relative experience in NCD, but the good news is that they thought I was still young. I was quite happy about that. But they did not give me funding. I mean, I did not manage to convince them to give me funding. And this is their overall assessment. If you read on the bottom part, it says that it's likely that significant results will come out. So they look at the potential of the research funding, and all parts of the project seem to be funded, and they look at the feasibility of the research if being funded. Then they concluded that the application is not prioritized since limited relevance to poverty reductions. So I thought maybe I haven't actually write it in the best possible way to convince them that they should prioritize my research. And they thought that there's an unclear balance in complementary research between Sweden and Indonesia. Daniel raised a very good point about complementary of research team. It's not about a single person, it's a team actually who submit the proposal, and it's the credential of the team which is being evaluated in the proposal. Then I asked myself the question that is the title of this research, of this presentation. What do actually reviewer look at in a research proposal? And then I came to a conclusion. It is actually what the funders ask the reviewer to look at. They don't look at other thing other than what the funders look them to look at. So my experience sitting in the Swedish Research Committee for 2 years now, when we commit ourselves to do the reviews, the council gave us a handbook. So this is the handbook I got from the Swedish Research Committee last year, or this year, 2020, for the peer review. And it details very much what we should look at. And all the criteria are there, transparent. And actually all the criteria are actually published in the call for application. So if we want to be successful, the most important thing is read the call properly. Every details, how to write the proposal, what aspect will be evaluated, all of those items are already there in the call for application. So in the next 10-20 slides, I'm going to show the guideline from the Swedish Research Council. It's my personal view here. I don't represent the Swedish Research Council. That is the disclaimer I'd like to make at this point. So we submit proposal, but we often do not know what happened to the proposal afterwards. So when we have submitted the proposal, when the deadline has passed, there will be a peer review, a pre-review process. We have to, if we are invited to be in the committee, we have to report our conflict of interest. Do we have any conflict of interest with any of the applicants? So I have to go through all the list of the application and tick the application which came from my maybe family member, my friends, my collaborators. So I'm not allowed to review those applications. So during the review process, then I need to read and grade and write a preliminary assessment, after which I have to rank all the applications. So typically in Swedish Research Council, we got around 30 to 35 applications to read. So it was very hard time for me during this last 2 years when I sat in 2 research committees, because each of them gave me around 30 to 40 research applications to read. And most of the time it's during summer holiday. So they send the application to me in May or in June and expect my review by mid-August already. So I have spent the last 2 summers reviewing and reading the proposal. And that is very crucial when we have to look at when do the reviewers read the proposal. Because it could be in the most busiest time in the year when they do a lot of teachings. It could be the time when they are supposed to have holiday. So the essence is that, as Daniel mentioned, write as concise as possible, as brief as possible, as friendly, reader-friendly as possible. Because I think reviewers don't spend too much time for each of the proposals because of the competing time interest. And when we have ranked all the applications, then we are invited to a committee meeting during which we discuss about the proposal. And oftentimes we only discuss the top, let's say, I don't know, maybe 20-30% of the applications. So those which are ranked at the bottoms, they automatically will not be discussed, and hence will be discarded automatically. When we have this discussed and agree on a grade for all the application, we have to shortlist the application and rank the successful application with a few reserve. after which we were given about 2 weeks time to write our final statement. So the final statement that we usually get from the review committee is a joint statement from the committee. It's not an individual statement. So each of the proposal in the Swedish Research Council are read by at least 4 reviewers, and they come from different backgrounds, and therefore it's very important to write the proposal as easy to read as possible, because it might be that I'm reading a proposal on malaria, which I don't have any expertise on, but still in the scope of public health and epidemiology, I have to read that proposal. And then we propose a list of successful application. We give it to the committee, the Swedish Research Council, and then they make a decisions of the successful applications. So in brief, each application reviewed by 4 members, and then we have to write preliminary statement. Some act as a rapporteur who are going to write the final statement. Some act as the reviewer who are going to give comments only. And most important thing is that the review shall only be based on the application content. So these are exact sentence I copy paste from the guidebook. So it says clearly over there, don't look at their website, don't look on their Facebook whether they are good researchers or not. Just see what they have written in the proposal. So it's very important to put everything we want to say in the proposal, because reviewers are not allowed to look at other sources when they write the applications. So what do they look at? This is a long and winding sentence. This is not up to 66 words, Daniel, but it's quite long. I just put words here. So a project that has an excellent scientific quality and is proposed by a highly reputable or credible group and qualified application, sorry for the typo, and has high feasibility in its implementations in terms of research environments, infrastructure, research team skills, time plan and assessment of risk and gains, and is relevant to the project objective and address compelling scientific question within its scientific area with apparent originality and novelty. So when we finish reading this sentence, we decide not to apply to any grant applications. So it's such a long sentence. Of course, try to simplify this. So I'll take 5 keywords: scientific quality, applicants, feasibility, relevant, originality, and novelty. So I like to combine these 5 keywords and put it in the words mnemonic called saffron. So focus on scientific quality, applicants, feasibility. I put feasibility twice because there are 2 F there in saffron, and it's also a very important aspect. Is it feasible? That is one of the main aspects that reviewer look at. Even though it's a very good, high quality research application, still if it's not feasible, it's not feasible. Relevant, originality, and novelty. So saffron is something which is very famous here in Sweden. For those who have came to Sweden, probably know about December 13, when there's a Lucia celebration. Young children sang songs in light with in dark with candle, and people eat lucerkato, we call it, or saffron bun. So now back to business. I'll show the next few slides by showing example from one of my successful application and one of the application which I failed. So I submitted in 2016, the top one, an application to the Swedish Research Council on the pulse pressure to predict cardiovascular diseases. And on the bottom here, I have another application which was approved by the council, submitted in 2017 on risk modeling for person-centered prevention and control. So the first quality, scientific quality, the S of saffron. So these are few guiding questions. I'm not going to read all of them. So there are details, and I'll share the slide later. Whether it's scientifically significant, whether the project has conceptual and theoretical foundations, the overall design and description, is it sufficiently clear and systematic, whether there's any scientific merit if we give this funding to this group, whether the proposal has thoroughness, Daniel also mentioned this, whether they have reviewed the state of the art also, and the use of research method, whether it's suitable, the data management process, starting from data collection, analysis, and the statistic use, whether they are well-defined and appropriate. And in Sweden, this last criteria is very important, whether there's any gender balance in the research group. So oftentimes when we apply for a research grant, we have to think of who are in the group. We try to achieve gender balance in terms of the research team or the research assistants or PhD student. So these are the scientific assessment of my application, the top one, the fail one, and the bottom one, the successful one. So when I go through this example, you will see the characteristic of a failed proposal. Reviewer try to justify why the proposal is failed. So they write quite long assessment. If the application is successful, usually we get very short statement. And the scientific qualities, let me go back later, is being assessed on a grade of 1 to 7, from outstanding to very poor. I mean, on the bottom here we see a very poor proposal is a proposal with very few strengths and numerous major weaknesses. If the proposal is outstanding, then it represents a proposal which is exceptional strong and with negligible weaknesses. So probably I should not read all the details here, but if we look at the bottom part, the successful one on risk modeling, the reviewer thought that my proposal has overall excellent scientific quality, and I employ new methodology, machine learning and big data approach. They thought that it conceals some risk, but the characteristic of Swedish Research Council proposal is risk-taking. So they like a high-risk proposal with high gain. And I think that's why they thought the proposal is good enough. But if we look at the upper parts, the failed proposal, I got a score of 4 on the scientific quality. And they try to motivate why the proposal got a score of 4, and they pinpoint some weaknesses. For example, one weakness is that I haven't stated quite clearly how to estimate the causal effect of the association. Okay, so moving to the second criteria, the applicants of the saffron A. As Daniel mentioned already, the merits and competence, the lead applicants has significant influence on the success of the proposal, the credibility, previous experience, scientific competence, independent line of research. If we are writing this grant as a newly graduate PhD student, we have to be able to show that we are independent of our previous supervisor by showing our publication track record. So we have to start to publish with other people who are not our main supervisor or our supervisor. That is one way to see whether the researcher is independent or not. Whether the applicant has sufficient scientific network. So network is also very important, as has been mentioned by Daniel also. So on the successful ones, I was happy that they thought that I'm experienced enough. Before they thought I was still quite young. I hope they did not think that I was old enough already. But in the last 10 years, I tried to write as many as possible, publish as many as possible publications. So I think that was appreciated well by the reviewer. And very important, my friends, my colleagues in the team also. So it's very important to bring people with broad competences to add the credibility of the team. So I'm very lucky that I have had a lot of good friends with whom I can work together, with whom I trust in developing research proposal. I think the first one is the unsuccessful one. The bottom one is the successful one. So the next one is feasibility, and kind of reiterating the points that Daniel mentions, the design and timetable, availability and accessibility of personnel, from which university, from which laboratorium, from which research group. That's the environment. Whether we have the ethical applications or ethical permits to do the project. It's not necessary to have the permit in the application, but we have to state that to show that we are aware of this problem and we are going to apply for the ethical applications. And so whether the proposed research methods, infrastructure, the experiment fieldwork are appropriate. And again, we see the balance between feasibility and risk. So it's whether it's a project which is characterized by high risk, high gain, or high risk, low gain, or low risk, high gain, and so on. So those are the items that reviewer look at also. So on this front, these are the assessment for the unsuccessful proposal. The applicant have had the data and the technique available. It was quite okay, so it was reviewed as feasible. But I think I failed on another point. So the next point is the relevance, whether it is relevant to the call. There are so many calls that are out there, so we have to submit the proposal to the right call. As Daniel mentioned, if it's call about climate change, if we are talking about cardiovascular diseases without any link to climate change, then it is certainly not relevant. And these 3 points are relevant to the call for development grant. I mean, Swedish Research Council, they have so many different types of grants, and these 3 points are especially for the development grant in low middle income countries. Therefore, they have this concern related to low middle income countries. So this criteria is not part of the regular assessment. And this is one example from my other research grant, which was successful, which was reviewed as a relevant topic to the current global health policy, as well as addressing broad sustainable development goals discussion. So the last point, novelty and originality, whether the project extend or challenge the current understanding, whether we have new compelling scientific questions, whether that increase knowledge within a specific research area, whether we use novel technology, even though the research question is probably not novel, but if we use novel technology, there is a bonus point. There's any clear progression in terms of novelty, whether there's any potential impact. Of course, if it's possible to result in research where will give us Nobel Prize, for example, that is, of course, being assessed with very high value. So these are one of the most important points, which is being discussed in the review committee, whether this research is novel enough. And some of the committee will think that this has been researched for many years and there's nothing new in this research. So how do we ascertain that the research is new? I think one simple way is to do a PubMed search. If you put the keywords of the research of the proposal in PubMed, and if we can find systematic review published on that topic, that is one indication that the topic does not need any research, any further research. So lastly, this is the review for the unsuccessful and the successful application. So as you see the characteristic of unsuccessful application, reviewer try to identify the weaknesses of the application. So here another weakness, the authors do not explain how the application will advance the statistical methods of multi-level analysis and how the use of these methods will be able to solve these problems. And for the successful application, you see it's very direct, very short, and with a good grade. So, of course, when we get rejection letter like this, we sometimes very sad. But the good news is that we can always improve the proposal and by reading all the comments from the reviewer and try to improve the proposal. So this is the final overall assessment of the unsuccessful one on the top and the successful on the bottom. And focus clearly on what was pinpointed by the reviewer. And that is what I do when I write a new application. So my tips for all of us, when we write a new application, read all the previous evaluation, even though they are not relevant at all in terms of the research area. If I'm writing a proposal on HIV today, for example, I'm going to read this review again, because I'm going to see what the reviewer point at before, even for another proposal. So if they say that I have to add a novel research question, then I'll reread my proposal and see whether I have done that job properly. Okay, I think that's the last slide yeah. So then finally, when we were asked to write our assessment by the Swedish Research Council, they gave us some tips. What should reviewer consider when we write the final assessments? So we have to focus only on the strength and the weaknesses, no personal opinion, no personal comments. we have to ensure that the written comment correspond to the grade. For example, we are not going to give a grade of 4, but in the written comment, we say this is an outstanding proposal, because an outstanding proposal is supposed to get a grade of 7. So that is what it meant by written comment and grades. Consider the guiding questions. So we see here, Swedish Research Council explicitly say we have to consider all those questions, and those are the criteria we use to evaluate proposal. Write concisely, comments on the divergent from the general instruction, and write in English. But we are not supposed to write very long summary of the research. Do not state individual comments and some personal. So as we know that different research council come up with different criteria for evaluating the research proposal. And this is another research council called Forte. In their annual call, they have 2 rounds applications. The first round, we only submit 3 pages of sketch. So the 3 pages are being evaluated against these criteria on the screen: scientific quality, relevance, and feasibility. So those are the points that we have to ensure are there in the proposal for the sketch. And if we are lucky to pass through the first stage, we will be invited to submit the full application. And these are the criteria that they are going to look at against the full proposal. So we see additional criteria. For example, we have to emphasize on the cross and multidisciplinary approach. We have to emphasize on collaboration with the user of the research. Forte is very picky about the implementation of the findings later. So we need to ensure that we talk to the end user and communicate and maybe collaborate and ensure that the research results will be utilized properly. So of course, in Indonesia, we have DP also, and LPDP. This is one example from their RISPRO International Collaboration Call. And they focus on about the same questions: scientific relevance, innovations, and novelty. We get human capacity building. I think that is the feasibility aspect and the impact. So different groups or different funders have different criteria. What we need to do as a researcher is just to ensure that we follow the criteria. So what's the tips to increase the chance of funding? We cannot guarantee the winning proposal, but how to survive peer review, select the appropriate funders, and read the instruction carefully over and over again. Stick to the timeline, format, and length. Sometimes this could be seen as minor. I mean, you have the wrong font size, the wrong font type, but oftentimes, I mean, this could influence the modes of the reviewer to read the proposal. So first impression, I think that counts, and that's my 30 minutes actually. So if I may extend for another 5 minutes, Bu Egy. So make the case that there's a need for this particular study, convince the reviewer, and very important, as Daniel mentioned, ask our peers to read the proposal maybe many times, and especially peers who are not within this research area. So what we refer to as knowledgeable outsider. So I'll leave you with some tips. What do we do not to let the reviewer bring us down? So write a brilliant and concise proposal that is enjoyable to read for all. I literally mean all the reviewers, because not all the reviewers are expert in the field that we are proposing. So we have to write it very simple so anyone can read the proposal. Follow all the instructions. Also here, literally all the instructions to the applicants, and usually they are quite detailed. So make the reviewer love the proposal at the first sight, and first page is very important, and ensure that we keep that impression last until they read the last page, and let them know what the research is about early on. So oftentimes people write the research aim as the first sentence in the proposal. So introduction, this study will. So sometimes this research objective is hidden in the forest of words after paragraphs after paragraphs. So I think it's very important to let them know what it is about early on, maybe already in the first sentence. educate them that the problem is relevant, original, novel, important, and urgent. As I said earlier, many reviewers, they are not knowledgeable in that specific field, especially if the field is very narrow. So then therefore we have to ensure that we can educate the reviewer. Convince them that you and your team, or we or our team, has the appropriate expertise to address the problem. And we detail very clearly who is doing to do what and when. It's not helpful if we say that, well, I'm going to put in 50 experts in these teams from Harvard, from Johns Hopkins, from Gajah Mada, and so on, without detailing what they are going to do. So usually in my research proposal, I write Professor X will contribute in this, Professor Y will contribute in that, and so on. So it's more important to see how their expertise complement each other than where they come from. And Daniel mentioned a lot about budget, so I'm not going to add on that point anymore. So be realistic, focus, clear, excellent, and you can add on all the good qualities that needed. And show the reviewer that you will execute the project with the highest scientific and ethical standards. And very important, do not underestimate the importance of popular scientific description and the abstract. I think in Swedish Research Council, we have to write 4,500 words of popular scientific description in Swedish. That's not something I'm going to write. I usually get my colleagues to help me write, but it's something which is very easy to read in the journalistic style, to tell the reader, the reviewer, in briefly what the project is about. So, yeah, oftentimes we are brought down, and again, this is one of my first research applications. But what is important for us as researchers, as new or young or even established researchers, we always have these up and downs. When you are brought down, I think sometimes you get good appreciations. And this is one example, a research proposal I submitted in 2016, a very large research application with 15 people. And if we read the concluding remark, we reject this research program for funding. So that was quite disappointing. But the next sentence was quite encouraging. We recommend highly that they develop their research program further for a future research funding application. They offer a very successful and timely line of work, but it would need more convincing in the implementation plans. So I was quite sad when I got this letter in 2016. It was quite a down time also. We invest a lot of time in doing this research application, the whole group. But we got these very convincing comments, and then we submitted again in 2018, 2 years later. So it was the same kind of program grant. A program grant is a big grant of 6 years. Usually it's a program which consists of many sub-projects. So we revised the proposal, we read through the reviewer comments very, very, very carefully. We addressed all the points, improved the proposal, and we submitted again in 2018. And when the decision came, the most important thing is the last part. I don't even read the middle part, and then I go to the last part, and they say it was approved. So I was very happy. The whole group was very happy. And it's a research project that we are running now at UME University. That was when I was still at UME University in 2018. It's called STACI, Sustainable Behavior Change for Health, supported by personalized, tailored, adaptive, risk-aware digital coaching in social context. So it's quite a lengthy title. It's not easy to read. But basically what we are going to do is to move behavior change program into mobile application and social media. So it's a 6-year project until 2024. Since it's a program funding, we get the first 3 years. Next year, we have to make a midterm report. If they think that we are doing good, then we will get the next 3 years. So it's a 6-year program, which is a multidisciplinary collaborations between the university and the county council and in the health authorities. So in the university, we brought together 4 people from 4 different faculties, including medicine, arts, social sciences, science, and technology. And I think that is one lesson learned that I would like to share with the audience also, the importance of multidisciplinary collaborations. Oftentimes we are sitting at the Faculty of Medicine, we think that everything could be solved by medicines. But it is not. The current pandemic, COVID-19, of course, it could be solved by the coming of vaccines. But what about people behavior, the risk-taking behavior, their attitudes towards a restriction and so on? All those will necessitate people from social sciences to help us to engage the research and the people. So it seems that it's quite easy to get funding, but I have to say that it's a lot of work, and I think that was pointed by Daniel also. Over the last 10 years, I've submitted together with my colleagues many proposals, and I was not successful until 2015. So I started my research grant application already in 2008, and I've gone through the first 8 years without any success, really without any success. But we keep fighting, we keep submitting proposal, and we know that good news is coming. And then we start seeing the fruits of the seeds, that the hard work that we put in. And that is what I would like to use to motivate many young researchers. Keep trying, because when you are brought down, bring it on. So if this is a long presentation, the only thing I'd like you to take away from this presentation is saffron. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof. Nawi. If I can applause now, I will give you a big applause, because it is very good presentation and very encouraging all of us, I believe. Prof. Daniel, are you still with us?
I am.
Hi. Okay. So we have several questions already now. Okay. Now, from Ibu Fatwa. Prof. Daniel, often it is difficult to fit our ideas to the call for proposal. Do you have any tips on how to overcome this?
It's a really interesting question, because the reality is not every call for grants is appropriate for what we want to do. There are just some that don't fit. I had a colleague who did obesity research. That was all he ever did. And he had to bash his studies into obesity research. So if a funding call came up that was on something to do with cardiovascular disease, he would then say, well, obesity is related to cardiovascular disease, and he'd find a way of moving it in. And I think that's kind of it. There are some things that you're just not going to get it into, but you do have to also be flexible enough to think, how might my area of interest relate to this thing? How can I apply it? How can I think about it? Sometimes it doesn't work, but I think one also has to be flexible and open to the possibility. But it's also, so it depends on the funder, but it's also well worth talking to the funder early on to find out if your thinking will match. So the Wellcome Trust, for example, will often allow you to contact them, send an idea, and they'll say, yes, it fits, no, it doesn't, and you know very early on.
So we still can consult to the scheme of funder?
It depends on the funder, but some funders welcome it, and you should, yeah.
Good, nice. Prof. Nawi, you have any concern about these questions?
Yeah, I think it's very funder specific. I think we have to read carefully the purpose of the call. The Swedish Research Council, for example, they launch many calls in a year, and some calls are very specific to specific objectives. So I think we have to just play the game to fit our ideas to the call.
Okay, yeah, good, nice, thank you. And second question from Ibu Jaja, how to adapt a proposal style from one to another, as each has different approach and likeness of proposals that coming.
So I think this again is an interesting problem. You do have to write for a funder, and different funders do have different styles and preferences, and there's no way around it. I remember it used to be that NIH grants were extremely long and detailed, and they thought that grants to the MRC in the UK were ridiculously short and didn't have enough detail. It really does depend on the funder. So there's no single way to adapt it. I think Nawi's saffron outline is universal. People, they look at the quality of the grant, they look at the quality of the team, they look at the novelty. This doesn't really change across grants. So you need to keep your eye on those kind of elements, but you do need to develop grantsmanship for different kinds of grant calls.
Yes, agree. Prof. Nawi, do you have any comment?
Yes, I think I agree with Daniel. I really hope that there's a software like EndNote, the reference manager, where you can click, now I'm going to submit to Swedish Research Council, change the style to Swedish Research Council style, next time to NIH, change the style. But there's no such software, so we have to invest a lot of time, I think, to really adapt the proposal to the different funders.
Okay, yes, okay. Good, next, Septa. To Prof. Daniel, how do we know that our goals are really directed to other people or to get to the grant provider? Because sometimes, in our opinion, our goals or objectives have been so clear for us.
So I'm not actually clear what that's. I'm not clear on the ideas there. So maybe Septa could clarify.
Yes. Septa, silakan.
Okay, thank you, Professor Daniel. Can you hear my
Yep. Yes, very clearly.
Okay, sometimes we cannot deliver our ideas clearly to other people, so they cannot understand what is our research goals. But in our opinion, it's so clear and it have a significance. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yep,
right?
yep. No, now I understand. Terima kasih. So I think that sometimes we fool ourselves. We think we've got a really clever idea and it's terribly important and other people don't see it. And we think that it is their problem, not our problem. We think that they're just not getting how clever it is. And actually it's our problem because we're not getting that lots and lots of people have evaluated this idea. The other possibility is the other way around, which is they're not getting it. And the only way to overcome they're not getting it, if it is a genuinely good idea, is, I think, in testing it on other people. It's why it's so important to send grants proposals to others to review and get feedback on it, because it picks up very quickly whether you're explaining your ideas or not. And we did this recently in icddr, where people sent their grant proposals around, and it was very clear that in their heads, they had a great idea, but they were not communicating this idea to others. And you get quick feedback on that and you can adapt it. Sometimes it is that the idea isn't as clever as you think, but other times just getting some review and some feedback helps that process.
Yeah, I think that testing to another people is very, very important and important step for us to maybe make it more clear. Prof. Nawi, do you have any suggestion?
Yes, I think it's our ability to communicate our research idea. Yeah, sometimes the research idea is great, but if we are not able to communicate that concisely and clearly, then people don't get the idea. Even among reviewers themselves, actually, they have different opinions. We have been in different situations where out of 10 reviewers, 3 of them thought that it was a very great idea. The other 7 thought that it was nothing. It was rubbish, I think. So even the reviewer themselves, they have different opinions. So I think it's very good suggestion from Daniel, test it to other people. And that is what we are doing in our research group also here in Gothenburg. We motivate people to pitch their idea. So the most important thing, if you can pitch the idea in less than 5 minutes, and if you can make other people understand what you are going to do in 5 minutes, then you are successful in conveying the idea. But if after you talk for 20 minutes and no one understands what you are going to do, then you need to make a new effort. I think that is what we do all the time in the research group. I mean, we encourage each other to pitch and to improve the research idea. So at this stage, it takes time, so we have to start very early. It's impossible to start writing a research application 4 weeks before the deadlines, or maybe for some research application, not even 6 months before the deadline. As Daniel mentioned, NIH proposal and EU proposal is extremely huge. So we have to start even maybe 1 year before. For smaller grants, it's possible to start a bit later, but still, the more we work on the drafts, the better it would be. I think that's a very simple principle.
Thank you for your both suggestions. The next questions to Prof. Daniel from Jihan. In making a proposal, what is the main attraction in this process?
Money. I think that it is the opportunity to develop some independent research. It is an amazing privilege to be able to be given money to develop your ideas and your science. And that's just an extraordinary opportunity. So I think the attraction is in that. I have to say at icddr, it's a soft money organization. So some of it is simply that one maintains one's employment, which is very attractive indeed. But I think that it's, in terms of pushing the science forward, it's just an amazing, amazing privilege.
Okay. Prof. Nawi, I guess you have a same answer?
Yes, very similar situation here in many universities. I think many universities in Europe and the US, we are dependent on soft money, research money. So unless we can attract fundings, we cannot build our research group. So I think that is the main attractions. And of course, the ability to develop our research profile, our research group. I think that is what Daniel mentioned. I fully agree.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next question is it's very interesting question from Bujaya. What is the most annoying things you often see during review session? We therefore might try to avoid it. Prof. Nawi.
Yes, I think this is quite general also. I mean, we often want to read good proposal. So sometimes if we open in a proposal and we see a lot of typos, I mean, start from very basic thing. I mean, if I start reading the proposal, I see a lot of typos, grammatical errors. I'm not native speaker, of course. I have limitation also, but if it's clearly shown in the proposal that the researcher have not invest sufficient time to make the proposal a proposal, then that is quite annoying. But at the same time, it's quite good also, because then I don't need to spend a lot of time in reviewing the proposal. So that is my work actually. I mean, if I get a very poorly written proposal, then actually it's the task of the reviewer, because then we tend to give low grades, and then that proposal automatically falls into the lower part of the ranking list. So very important, I think, to have enough time to prepare the proposal. I think this thing is easier said than done. Oftentimes also I have less time than I want to prepare the proposal, but a good advice is to come well prepared, to submit only a well prepared proposal.
Okay. Prof. Daniel, do you have any?
So if I can add a few more things, maybe one more thing. Sometimes the review committee, they are the same person for certain years. I mean, I've been sitting in this committee for 2 years, and oftentimes the reviewers actually remember the application submitted last year. So oftentimes I remember, I have seen this proposal last year. So maybe one trick, I'm not teaching everyone this trick. Maybe this year I write a very poor proposal, and next year I improve it. So the reviewer will say, oh, these guys have worked a lot in this proposal. Maybe they are doing a good job.
Okay, make a big change. Okay.
Yeah, make a lot of changes in the next year.
Yes. Prof. Daniel, do you have any suggestion for this?
No, I think now we covered it very nicely.
Okay, thank you. But I think that we are all the last minute person, right, Bu Fatma? We are all the last minute person.
Yeah, that's true. It is a good experience for us.
Yeah, I think that we need more adrenaline, because the more we approach the deadline, so we get the more adrenaline. So it makes a proposal. Okay, we come to the next questions from Bunga Paramasanti from Universitas Alma Ata. To both of you, Prof. Daniel and Prof. Nawi, how do you suggest early stage researchers, fresh PhD graduates, to initiate their first international grant application? Is there any early career funding? Can you give us some practical tips on how to build a research collaboration for young scholars. Please, who may answer this first? Prof. Daniel?
So there are a couple of ideas in there, Bunga, that I think are worth pulling out. One is how as an individual do I apply for research grants? And there are some early career research grants by different funders. So again, you have to look to see what's available. You know, Wellcome Trust has them available for LMICs, where you can apply for it as an early career researcher. NIH has it as well. I don't know what other funders do. But one of the best ways to learn the process is, in fact, to become part of a team, to become part of a group of people who are writing a grant. You won't be the PI, you might not even be a co-PI, but you begin to develop that grantsmanship process and you begin to work out how to do it well and get involved in the scholarship of it. So that's one. In terms of building the networks, I think that one really does have to be quite outgoing in terms of trying to make contact with people, identify people that you think are interesting to work with, have a possibility to work with. You know, I like that person's ideas and what they're doing. And researchers are very often open to direct approaches about, you know, are there any opportunities here? So those would be my quick suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Daniel. Prof. Nawi?
Yes, I cannot agree more with Daniel, the importance of a network and being mentor. I think very important to get a good mentor who have experience in application writings or publishing and so on. But also very important to build our own credibility as young researcher. It's very important to publish, because that is one criteria which is reviewed very graded very highly. Of course, the review process take into account the career age. As a reviewer, if we evaluate a professor who have been working for 30 years against a newly fresh graduate PhD students, we take that into account. I mean, this PhD student cannot accumulate 50 papers in 2 years for sure, or maybe someone can't. But then we rate that against their career age. So it's very important to keep publishing to build the credibility. But the mentorship, I think, is extremely important. You need to get a good mentor to help you to review the proposal. And I think a good mentor is a mentor who do a lot of track changes. It's not so helpful if you get a mentor who say, you are doing a great job, but then your application is being rejected. So a good mentor is a mentor who actually invests time to read comments and review the proposal, especially grant applications. I'm very happy to be corrected, to be reviewed, to be edited significantly, much better than being rejected by the committee.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think this is the from Lisandra to Prof. Nawi. First question: sometimes the project is a bit complex in methodology. How to keep the proposal as simple as possible, but still pretty detailed to show all the quality and detail of the project that proposed. And the second one, is there any suggestion or tips and tricks to start writing a proposal for a newbie researcher? Please, Prof. Nawi.
Yeah, I think method section is often is a big complex thing to write. I fully agree. But overall, as Daniel have mentioned also, proposal writing is an art also. So it is a scientific exercise, but it's also an artistic exercise. So what I usually do when I write method sections, I usually start with lengthy elaborations. So I write as clear as possible all the important things, but then I shorten the text down to the required text. I mean, sometimes if in the Swedish Research Council platform, application platform, we have to copy paste all the text into boxes. So there are boxes already with maximum number of words. So I usually start with lengthy text and then I shorten it many times. I mean, don't do it one time, but do it many times. Shorten it the first round and see whether it's still understandable, and then do one more round until we reach the amount that is allow in the text. But a few keywords that needs to be there. The study design, of course, the population and sample. So we need to tell the reviewer where they are going, where this study will be conducted, who the population is. Sometimes I read a review, an application, until the end, I don't actually know where the study will be conducted. So that's not a good sign for describing a method sections. And one powerful keywords in research application is sample size and power. I think that is the must in many research applications. If we don't calculate the sample size and power, it's often criticized by the reviewer. And it's an easy point for the reviewer to criticize, especially if they want to pinpoint the weaknesses, especially if the research application is not going to be funded, then that's the easier point to find, whether they have calculated the sample size and the power of the study. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Nawi. I think the second question already captured in your answer previously. Prof. Daniel, do you have any suggestion for question number 1? How to write the concise methodology?
I think Nawi covered that perfectly. I think the point to remember is everyone has the same constraint. So it isn't that you have less space than everyone else does. Everyone is under the same constraint. So the challenge is a challenge that everyone faces, and it is a question of my approach is almost exactly Nawi's approach, which is to write it out in full and then begin the process of bringing it down in size, but still keeping the essential elements. I think Nawi's point about sample size calculation, I think, is quite interesting, because I actually think it's kind of a lazy way to reject grants, but it certainly is used as a way to do it.
Thank you so much. Actually, we still have.
Sorry, can I come back to point 2, which was the
sure.
How do you start as a newbie?
Sure.
The way to start writing a grant is to sit down in front of the computer and start writing. And I say that I think one of the biggest impediments to writing is thinking about the impediments to writing. It's like having to go away and sharpen your pencils before you start, and then go and get a cup of tea or something. Start.
It's very important and very correct tips, Prof. Daniel. Thank you so much. Actually, we only have 5 minutes left for this discussion session, but 1 or 2 more questions, I think it's okay. From Bu Fatwa, talking about peer reviewers, do you mind to share how do you manage to have a peer reviewer? I think it has not become a habit in Indonesia. Do you arrange a group of researchers that being a peer reviewer each other or something? Do you have any suggestions?
Can I jump in on this one?
Yes.
I was intrigued by something that Nawi said in his presentation, and he talked about the fact that he had developed colleagues to work with that he trusted. And I think that is incredibly important in peer review, because one wants to know not simply that one's going to get feedback, but one's ideas are going to stay within a group. Within departments, hopefully one trusts one's colleagues, but I have often found that my universities at different times have set up peer review processes where you send the grants around and they sort of allocate them, and I don't get review that's useful. I find it much better, in fact, to target colleagues who I know are working in the area or who are good at writing grants and who might be able to give valuable feedback, and then approach them and say, look, I've got this grant in this area. Would you mind reviewing it for me? And often I will reduce the workload and say, I'd particularly like you to comment on, and then therefore make it easier for them to comment on a particular area. Thanks.
Okay. Prof. Nawi, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I fully agree with Daniel. I think it's solidarity also. If I do review your research proposals, I hope that next time you can help reading my research proposal also. So that is, I think, a habit that we need to build. And oftentimes, it's very important to work with someone whom we trust, because the point that Daniel mentioned.
Okay. I'm getting out of my battery. But I think that this is, we have still 7 minutes, but this is, I think that the last questions from Yan Fei Wu. In China, reviewer need to make funding decisions very quickly because there are hundreds of applications on their desk, which means that the first impression of the application is very important. If they think your abstract is not that good, they don't want to read. So my question is, what kind of summary or abstract do you think is easy to impress the reviewers? I think this is for both of you.
Go ahead.
Please.
Nawi, you go.
Should I? Yeah, I think it's the question of what, why, who, when, and how. I think if you can squeeze the answer of those 5 questions in that abstract, I think we'll do a good job in conveying what we are going to do. Yeah, that's in short.
Yes, I agree. Do you have any comment for this, Prof. Daniel?
I think that in many cases, the abstract or the summary is one of the most important parts, because it depends on the funding of the review process. But in some review processes, the only thing some of the reviewers will ever read is the summary or the abstract. And therefore, it has to be catchy and sort of pull you in with the excitement of it. So I completely agree with Nawi's characterization of the elements of it, but it's well worth spending time crafting it so it reads beautifully.
If I may add, I think the abstract is the less work part of the application often. So we usually write the abstract last, and we don't spend enough time to make it beauty. So I think that is a common mistake that we make. We write the abstract probably the last half a day before the deadline for application or submissions.
Yes, very correct.
So very important to have sufficient time to write a good abstract.
Yes, agree. Okay, so I think we have to make it quite quick. I think last questions from Liana to Prof. Nawi and Prof. Daniel. First question, do you have any proposal template? Can we use partner collaboration for submitting proposals? What standards are used in compiling the proposed funding section? You can go first with this question, Prof. Daniel. In the chat.
Yes. No, I'm reading it. Do you have? No, I don't have a proposal template because the templates typically come from the funder. So they say, this is the template that you need to use. Can we use partner collaborations for submitting proposals? Absolutely, I would encourage it, in large part because it also opens up more funding opportunities. What are the standards used in compiling the proposed funding section? I think it's funder specific, so it's really according to the way they want to do it, but it's typically by line items of activities.
Yes, Prof. Nawi.
Yes, I'm very good in downloading things. So I have a lot of proposal template from different funders, but all the templates are very specific to different funders, and oftentimes they change over time. So the template that is valid this year might not be valid next year. So it's very important to keep updated to the latest call of applications.
Yes.
But I guess what you meant is an example of a successful application. So I think that is one source of learning that you can use to start writing an application, and by looking at successful applications. But I also like to look at failed application, because that is where you get most critics. And if you try to address those critics in the new application, then most possibly you will do a good job in writing a good application.
Okay, thank you. I think the second question will be our last questions. What type of research are usually accepted? Survey model systems, or should be experimental?
I don't think there is a usually. It depends very much on the funding call and what they're funding.
Yes, agree. Prof. Nawi?
No, I don't think I have anything else to add. I think I agree with Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there is any participant who still want to ask or to discuss something, I think the committee provides link or website, so you can communicate your questions, your concerns. So we try our best to have your question or concern answered by Prof. Daniel and Prof. Nawi. It's very, very, very good event, I believe, in this afternoon. Thank you so much. Prof. Nawi said that maybe after this we cannot make a winning proposal, but I think I hope that everyone now have a very very good mood to start writing a good proposal. Thank you so much, Prof. Daniel and Prof. Nawi. The time now for the Ibu Liana. Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Dr. Eki, for very nice and interesting discussion. For the audience, thank you very much for your such question and participation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the closing session. Before we close this webinar, it's the high time for us to listen closing remarks from Dr. Fatwa Sari Tetradewi, MD, MPH, Ph.D., Chairperson of Sleman Health Demographic Surveillance System, or Sleman HDSS, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. For Dr. Fatwa, please welcome.
Thank you, Liana. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Prof. Daniel and Prof. Nawi. I think it is very fruitful discussion that we have from Professor Daniel. We can find that many details, many tips, and also motivating presentation that is brought by Professor Nawi. And I can feel that the audience is also very enthusiastic, very enthusiastic to follow this discussion until I think the Professor Nawi and also Professor Daniel, I think it's quite tired enough to answer the question. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for your willingness to share your experience with us. I think it is very good for us. The main message that we need to think when we want to have a winning proposal is we need to provide a time. Isn't that right, Bu Eki, and also other friend? We need to have time, to have effort, and to be thorough. So we can really impress the reviewer, and we can have a good proposal to win the grant. Okay, and I think on behalf of Sleman HDSS Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, we would like to express our best appreciation to both honorable speaker, Professor Daniel, and also Professor Nawi. And also we would like to thank to all participants that you participate until so far. We in Sleman HDSS, we are intent to increase the capacity of the researcher, and also we are trying to open collaboration. That is why we are invited you all to have this fruitful discussion this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for your participation, and I hope you enjoy and get the benefit of it. And I wish you all the good health and the successful proposal submission in the future by increasing our skill over and over. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fatwa, for your nice speech that motivates us to make a very nice proposal later on. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, like the answer for the question that cannot be addressed during discussion session will be posted in our website, and the recorded video of this webinar will be posted on Sleman HDSS YouTube channel. Please fill the following attendance form to verify your data, and also a certificate of participant will be sent in to your email later. You can check the link on chat room. Before we finish the webinar, let's open our video together and take a picture together to make some memory. Make sure we smile enough. And then I will counting 1, 2, 3, and then just hold on. Maybe we can waiting Professor Daniel. Okay, everyone, until I counting 1, 2, 3, and then just hold on for a moment, because a lot of participants in here, so we need to make sure everyone catch up in picture, right? So, okay, I will try 1, 2, 3. Keep smile. Okay, just wait a moment. I'm sorry, but let's smile together. It's quite funny, right? But it's okay. The committee still try to get our picture. Make sure we beauty and handsome enough with this smile.
Okay, once more.
Once more.
Okay, my count. 1, 2, 3, big smile. Thank you.
Thank you. It's done. Wait a moment, because a lot, like we have more than 100 participants in here. Okay, it's done. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of this event. As a presenter, I'm sorry if there are mistakes, and thank you very much for sharing your time and attention with us. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you very much. It was a great job.
Thank you very much.